Today's episode is sponsored by the Roads to Freedom Foundation's Omaha Unconvention, featuring Dr. Ron Paul, Larry Sharp, Senator Laura Epke, Austin Petersen, and many others. The Roads to Freedom Unconvention is May 25th through the 27th in La Vista, Nebraska. Use code word ROADS for a 20% discount on your tickets.
Roads to Liberty presents The Guardians of Liberty with your hosts, Nathan Barada and Zach Taylor.
What is missing from today's political discussion? This is an important question, I think, that a lot of people have been thinking about over the last few years with the rise of Donald Trump and all the political turmoil that has resulted from his campaign. Some might say that the reason for this is the radicalization of the Republican and Democratic parties. I do not believe this to be the case, because frankly, I do not believe that the parties are so much more radical today than they've been in the past. Now, the Democrats in some ways have radicalized, especially with the coming of Bernie Sanders. But a lot of the political turmoil we see today is not coming from their side of the aisle. It's coming from the Democrats, and specifically because of their hate for Donald Trump. You saw this during the primaries and the elections cycles not too long ago. You continue to see it today, where the very presence of disagreement, especially on college campuses, is cause for riots and violence to be committed. Why is this? This is certainly a new thing. It wasn't this way when I was younger. It wasn't this way during the Bush-Gore presidential election, the Bush versus Kerry, Obama versus McCain, or Obama versus Romney. There is certainly a lot of partisanship. There's certainly a lot of fighting, but I don't think it ever got to the level that it's gotten today. The country is polarized beyond recognition. You might even say beyond repair. Why is this the case? How have we come so far? The reason I believe that this has happened is we fail to a general lack of taking your opponents on good faith. I think Marco Rubio said it great in his opening for the CNN town hall not too long ago when he said that we've become a nation that doesn't talk to each other. We've isolated ourselves. We've retreated into echo chambers. We watch news channels that agree with us 100% of the time, do not challenge our preconceived ideologies and beliefs. Now, this isn't to say that I am not guilty of this myself. I certainly am. I think most of us, if not all of us, are guilty to one degree or another of this logical flaw. And I think it is incumbent on us, if we are to move forward as a country, to start showing good faith towards your political opponents. To start looking at your political opponents as people with a different viewpoint, a different opinion, and not look at them as evil or wicked or corrupt simply because they disagree with you. Now, this is not to say that there aren't wicked, evil, and corrupt people on all sides of the political aisle. Republicans, Democrats, even libertarian. But disagreement should not be taken as evidence of evil or malice. It should not be taking a different political position shouldn't automatically get you labeled as a racist, a sexist, a communist, a socialist. Those titles may be deserved. They may be accurately applied towards somebody. But it's only after rigorous examinations of someone's belief. Only after that should we be applying such loaded labels to people. And we're going to be getting into that during the course of this episode. And I'm going to be commenting on a few political protests that took place over the week, specifically against Christina Hoff Sommers, Jordan B Peterson, and then an event with Sargon of Akkad and Yaron Brook of the Ayn Rand Institute. We're also going to be talking about possible talks between North Korea and Donald Trump. That looks like it's going to be an interesting development there, hoping very much so that that goes forward. But I wanted to open up like this because I think it gets to the heart of the matter. It gets to the heart of what is wrong with our democracy, what is going on in our nation, why we see violence manifesting in the political and social arenas so common today, why it's not just rare isolated events anymore. Though I think we've calmed down in the year since Donald Trump's election, we are still seeing this around. People are still being called Nazis for no good reason. People are still being labeled as racist, sexist, homophobes, communist, alt-right, without justification and without examining individual viewpoints to see if those labels are actually justified. It's more prevalent, I believe, on the political left than it is on the right. Yes, you do get this on the right. You do get this from libertarians. But it's much more common from the left. If we were going to look back at that CNN town hall again, I think after Marco Rubio's call for taking each other on good faith, he was immediately rewarded with being compared to the murderer who killed 17 people at that school in Florida. It was so that it's hard to look at him and not look down the barrel of an AR-15. It's hard to look at him and not see the killer. This is the very definition of not taking somebody on good faith. He was accused of supporting the Second Amendment simply because he takes money from the NRA. And I'm not the biggest Marco Rubio fan myself. I have a lot of problems with him. No, I didn't vote for him and had no intention of voting for him during the primary. If I lived in Florida, I'd probably be looking for third-party alternatives to him because I doubt that I would like the Democratic opponent. But I think Marco Rubio he didn't do very well, but he did all right in that in that 2 minutes of hate. He held his own pretty decently, and that's because he tried to take his opponents on good faith. Yeah, I don't think he was even looking at them as opponents. He was just trying to explain his point of view. And Marco Rubio is a defender of the Second Amendment, and I don't believe he's a defender of the Second Amendment simply because the NRA gives him a minuscule amount of money. I mean, this is a man who raises millions of dollars during his campaigns to run for Senate. The NRA gave around $10,000 to him. It's some minuscule tiny amount, and yet he's being accused of supporting the Second Amendment simply because the NRA is giving him money. He's being told that he's comparable to the murderer of 17 children. You know, in the weeks since that massacre, we've seen many of these high school students who've gone through this traumatic experience. We're going to acknowledge that. But we've seen them get on national TV and compare the NRA to child murderers. We've seen them consistently take their opponents as though they were acting in bad faith without logic, without reason, without any evidence to support that claim. This is a mistake, and I hope going forward we can better condition ourselves to seeing this flaw in ourselves and in others and correcting it. Because I do not think that until this flaw is corrected on a massive scale, that we will see things start to calm down. This political violence, I do not think is going to end simply with Donald Trump either finishing out 8 years as president or being removed from office at the end of his first term. We have to take each other on good faith. Unless you have evidence to the contrary, I don't think it benefits anybody to be assuming that people who simply disagree with you are doing it for malicious reasons. If you have evidence of that, if you have evidence that somebody is legitimately a racist or a sexist or a communist or whatever the case may be, then you can apply that label. But you have to have a good reason for it. All right. After getting on my soapbox, thank you for listening today. It's just me. Zach is in the process of moving. You are listening to the Guardians of Liberty podcast. Please like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and visit our brand new website, roads2liberty.com. That's roads2liberty.com. You're going to be able to see all our videos, listen to all our podcasts. Pretty soon, we're going to be starting to write blogs that are going to be posted on the website. We hope to have that on there very soon. We hope to see you there. You can contact us at roadstolibertypodcast@gmail.com. You can also contact us on the website. Please give us a comment if you'd like to be a guest on the program. Send us a message. If you want us to cover a specific topic, send us a message then too. If you just want to tell us how awesome or terrible we are, we always appreciate comments. We always appreciate feedback. And we look forward to hearing from our amazing listeners. And we appreciate you guys so much to come and listen to us. All right, so after going on that soapbox, what is the reason I bring up the subject of taking people on good faith and not simply applying labels to them that are undeserved? Well, over the course of the week, we saw three prominent, well, really four prominent, I hesitate to call them right-wing, but I'm just going to call them right-wing for the sake of simplification. Right-wing speakers give presentations at college campuses, all of which received protests and some of which were shut down. Now, I'm, of course, talking about Christina Hoff Sommers, who is a feminist, but not of the social justice variety. I am talking of Jordan Peterson, who gained fame for refusing to go along with speech codes that Canada was proposing to pass, and then Sargon of Akkad, an English liberalist, and Yaron Brook, a Ayn Rand objectivist from the Ayn Rand Foundation. They were giving a talk in England, and they were also shut down. They were speaking together. So 3 events for prominent speakers. So I think I'm going to go through these one by one and give some of my take on this. So Christina Sommers, let's talk about her first. She was speaking at the Lewis and Clark Law School in Portland, Oregon. We all know how much of a bastion for tolerance and freedom and diversity of opinion Portland, Oregon is, right? Yeah, so she was talking in front of rooms full of students trying to give her presentation when a bunch of social justice feminists broke into the event, stood up at the podium next to her, and started chanting. And I'm going to read to you what they were yelling. "We choose to protest male supremacy, not give it a platform. Christina Sommers has repeatedly delegitimized the suffering of women worldwide. We believe our siblings and our comrades, We believe our siblings and our comrades. Women are not liars with victim mentalities. Rape culture is not a myth. Microaggressions are real. The gender wage gap is real. Trans people are real. Trans lives matter. Black lives matter." Holding up banners that say, "No platform for fascists," and "rape culture isn't a myth." Now, does anyone want to take a guess as to whether or not these people have ever listened to with the purpose of understanding Christina Hoff Sommers? Now, I'm not the most, I don't know the most about Christina Hoff Sommers myself, but I have heard her speak before. I've heard what she has to say. Nothing she's ever said strikes me as particularly fascistic. What I've heard, I've never heard her say anything that could be construed as misogynist. I've never heard her claim that trans people don't exist or that Black lives don't matter. See, if the protesters who were speaking out against Christina Hoff Sommers would actually sit down in the audience, listen to her speak, and take advantage of the question and answer that was going to follow the event, they may have learned something about her beliefs. They may have learned that she's the furthest thing from a fascist. She's no misogynist. She is simply a different kind of feminist, a kind of feminist that I actually hold respect for. You all know me. You all know the general take I have on feminists, on social justice warriors and the social justice mentality in general. I think it's absolute cancer. It's garbage. It produces a victim mentality in people where they're constantly looking for things to be offended by. And shocker, shocker, they find it. You know, when you're looking to be offended, you're going to find something to be offended by. That's just a fact of reality, my friend. As I take a swig from my coffee mug. Guinness forever. I love this stuff. But Christina Hoff Sommers, I'm sorry to say to all the people protesting her, claiming that she's a misogynist for some of the things she said, I'm sorry, it's just not true. You know, I appreciate truth too much to allow people to simply get away with making such accusations. So let's go through some of the things that they accuse Christina Hoff Sommers of. They say we choose to protest male supremacy. Christina Hoff Sommers does not advocate male supremacy. What she says is that there are differences between men and women. This is biologically true. This is socially true. There's no way you can reasonably deny this fact. This is why I call social justice warriors science deniers. Men and women are fundamentally different. There are biological differences between the sexes. You cannot simply change from one to another. Right? You're either born a man, you're born a woman, or you're born with, or you have a birth defect. You know, the existence of, say, hermaphrodites does not mean there are more than two sexes. Those are birth defects. There aren't sexes in and of themselves. There's only men and women. And the plain fact of the matter is that there are biological differences between them. Let's go into this a little bit more. Christina Sommers has repeatedly delegitimized the suffering of women worldwide. Prove it. Show me when she has done that, how she has done that. The thing that you notice about all these protests, they never have any sort of evidence or reason behind them. If they would ask, if they would to get up and ask something in the question and answer segment of her talk, they'd be able to present their point of view. They'd be able to actually give evidence and rebut her comments and say something of value, but instead they just stand in front of her holding signs and screaming, preventing anybody else from taking anything of value from the speech. You know, it becomes very strange to me how these people claim to have moral and intellectual superiority, but refuse at every step of the way to actually take the viewpoints of others into consideration, refuse to actually allow them to speak. If you truly have the superior point of view, if you truly are morally, intellectually, have the morally and intellectually superior viewpoint, you shouldn't fear other people being allowed to speak. You should welcome them, because it allows them the opportunity to expose their ignorance and allows you the opportunity to rebut it. Now, this is why libertarians should never, ever fear debate or rational discussion with others. If someone is willing to engage in a rational conversation with you about issues that we believe in, I think libertarians should always be ready for that. Libertarians should always be welcome to it. We should never, ever be the ones to shut people down. Because I do believe that libertarianism is the correct philosophy. I think it is the most moral political philosophy out there and the most rational and sane. So we should never back down for these kind of arguments. Moving on. We believe our siblings and our comrades, whatever that means. Women are not liars with victim mentalities. Well, women are not a monolith, my friends. Women aren't anything. I mean, there's certain biological features that define all women, but beyond that, what they are in their minds, they aren't all one thing. Each woman is different. So women are not liars with victim mentalities. Yeah, most aren't. Most women are not liars with victim mentalities. But some are. I mean, that's what social justice and modern day feminism does to people. It creates a victim mentality. So it's not that women in general have a victim mentality, it's that social justice philosophy instills a victim mentality into women where it doesn't belong. It teaches them that they are victims of systematic oppression, victims of the patriarchy that manifests itself in a wage gap and a rape culture, and this 1 in 5 women on college campuses is a rape myth. It teaches young girls as they are growing up that they are victims of something that does not exist. And because they believe in that, it leads a lot of them to be outright liars. All right, a lot of social justice warriors will lie in order to propagate their own point of view. And it wasn't too long ago where students at Missouri were making fake threats against themselves in order to bring awareness to the threats they suffer from every day. Well, I'm sorry, but if you're bringing threats against yourself, then it kind of undermines your entire argument, doesn't it? And go on, rape culture is not a myth. No, I'm sorry, rape culture is a myth. There's no such thing as rape culture in the United States. If you are a rapist in the United States and you get arrested and convicted, you are going to jail. Rape is against the law, my friends, and not only that, there are few crimes out there that are as socially looked down upon as rape. Now, I think murderers and pedophiles might be viewed worse by society than a rapist, but a rapist is one of the lowest forms of scum that exist in American society. We do not tacitly accept rape. We do not try to justify it. We punish it. But what a lot of feminists try to do is say that because not every rapist goes to jail, that means we accept it. That's not true. The problem with rape is it's a very hard crime to prove. What those of us on the individualistic side of the aisle, or those who are just anti-feminists in general, we require proof before punishing somebody for a crime that they are accused of. Innocent unless proven guilty. And that is what a lot of modern day feminists object to. Microaggressions are real. Microaggressions doesn't mean anything. What you're simply saying is that there are things that offend us. So I guess, yeah, they're real, but are they really a problem? No. Now, you can literally say anything is a microaggression. There's no common definition of it. There's no list out there that you can look at and say, this is a microaggression and this is not. A microaggression is simply something that offends a person that belongs to what a social justice warrior may think of as an oppressed minority. Women, Black people, Hispanics, immigrants, Muslims, yada, yada, yada. If something offends any of these people, it's to be considered a microaggression. So yes, they exist, but they're irrelevant. They make no difference to anything. A microaggression is a meaningless offense. The gender wage gap is real. No, it's not. You can say that all you want, but you're either woefully misinformed or you're a liar. That's just the common fact of the situation. The gender wage cap is merely just simply taking the average of what all women in society make and comparing it to the average of what all men in society make. So I'm sorry, and men do make more by that comparison, but it doesn't take into account occupation, doesn't take into account how many years have been worked. It doesn't take into account anything whatsoever, any relevant information. So the gender wage cap is not real. Trans people are real. No one said otherwise. Trans lives matter. No one said otherwise. Black lives matter. That's just a red herring. And again, no one said that. So this, again, if these protesters would have actually taken the time to listen to Christina Hoff Sommers and ask her questions at the end of the speech, they may have actually learned something, which is, of course, the whole point of Christina Sommers coming to their campus in the first place. Now, Jordan Peterson was speaking at Queen's College in Canada, and this is an event that got especially bad. So there were 100 or 200 speakers, protesters that were there. They started out by getting on the stage with a sign that says "Freedom to Smash Bigotry." The crowd that came to hear Jordan Peterson wanted nothing of this. They booed him off the stage. Security kicked him out of the venue. The protesters were kept, for the most part, outside of the venue, where they proceeded to bang on the doors and windows, scream at the top of their lungs, generally just making a nuisance of themselves during the presentation, so that people inside couldn't actually hear what was being said. They would bang on drums. They would bang on trash cans. At one point in time, they actually lined the exits of this building with trash cans and then started chanting, "Lock them in and burn it down." Now remember, these are the same people who think that Donald Trump is full of hate. Love Trump's hate, am I right? Unfortunately, these are the very same people who are trying to block the exits so that in the case of a fire, the people inside will all die. And then they start chanting, "Lock them in and burn it down." Now, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt here and assume that that was just in jest. But the people started chanting it back from the crowd and cheering it. This is disgusting. Would this be tolerated in any other circumstance? If a bunch of conservatives came to an event where a liberal speaker was talking on campus and then blocked the exits with trash cans and started shouting, "Lock them in and burn it down," what do you think CNN would have to say about that? What might MSNBC make of that situation? Would there be hours and hours of coverage dedicated to this show of violence on major cable news? I think there would be. I think because this is Jordan Peterson, which the mainstream media and the left in general has for some reason labeled as a fascist and a white supremacist, I think that they've decided not to make a story out of this, despite the fact that this is very clearly an important story. Now, security at this event did absolutely nothing to stop any of this. At one point, a security guard got between a student and the doors and told him he had to stop banging on the door and step back. The student proceeded to ignore them. Seeing this, many other students came up behind him and started banging on that very same door, at which time the security guard simply shook his head and walked away. Why is a college paying security to simply walk away from a situation like this? I can only imagine that the college itself told its security guards to stand down and do nothing because they don't want to be accused of being bigots or supporters of white supremacy. Now, as people were coming out of the event, students would line the hallways and chant shame at people who were living. Funny, isn't it? They were carrying shame at the people. They would surround them, get in their faces, scream at them, and wave stuff in their faces. And then if they didn't immediately walk away, they would start chanting, "Get out." That's some real tolerance right there. Remember, love Trump's hate. We don't want any bigotry on our campuses. We don't want anybody showing hatred or enacting violence against anything. We're tolerant. We're tolerant of our fellow students, unless those fellow students, of course, have a different viewpoint than our own. We are tolerant of diversity. We embrace diversity. but not any of that diversity of thought nonsense. That we can't have. Now, in King's College in London, Sargon of Akkad, who is a popular YouTube personality, who I've watched many of his videos and I listen to his podcast somewhat regularly. I like Sargon. I wouldn't necessarily call him a libertarian, but he's one of the closest things you get to a libertarian in Europe. And he's a very interesting individual, and I very much appreciate the work he does. But he was speaking with Yaron Brook, a Jewish objectivist. Now remember, the Jewish part's going to come in is going to be very important as I talk about the story. He was there to talk, and they were there to talk about Ayn Rand and the philosophy of objectivism. So they're talking at King's College, and this was an event that was put on by the King's Libertarian Society. I love that name. I love that there are actually libertarians in Europe, apparently. And they were there to talk about them. Now, due to the violent protests outside the event, the college had to turn away, well, they didn't have to, but the college turned away 200 non-student ticket holders. These are people who wanted to see the event, wanted to sit down and watch, but for some reason, because of the heckler's veto and colleges being overall pansies who don't want to stand up for freedom of speech, they were prevented to get into the event. Now, I remember when Ben Shapiro came to Omaha, most of the 2,000 people who went to see the event were not students. Now, there are not 2,000 students at Creighton who want to see Ben Shapiro. Most of them were people who were just big Ben Shapiro fans. You can only imagine how many people would have been able to see him had the college been turning away non-students. See, there's no real reason to turn away people who aren't students. But the college, King's College, apparently, too much of cowards to actually stand up to the real bigots and the real fascists in the room, which are the people who are standing outside that venue using threats of violence to prevent the event from going forward. Protesters pulled the fire alarm during the event and rushed the stage wearing black masks to hide their faces and waving an Antifa flag. Yes, this is one of those protests. One was punched in the face by an attendee. The flag was taken as a trophy of war by Sargon and is now displayed in his home. He actually made a video like this, which I will link in the description, where he has the flag up behind him that he describes as such, as a trophy of war. My goodness, I aspire to someday be on that level. To be on the level where I'm giving a talk somewhere and a bunch of Antifa idiots decide to rush the stage and I get the opportunity to steal their flag as a weapon of war. Now, Nathan, you may say, isn't this a violation of the non-aggression principle? Isn't this something that libertarians should condemn? You shouldn't take people's property, and you definitely shouldn't punch them in the face. Now, generally speaking, I completely agree with you. You shouldn't punch people in the face, and you shouldn't take their stuff. But I don't think that the reaction of the crowd to this attack on their venue was a violation of the non-aggression principle. Remember, they rented out this space. They gave out tickets to this space. They have every bit as much to right to have their event peacefully as anybody else does. There's no reason why they should be denied the right to hold an event on King's College. And yet, through means of violence, these Antifa idiots wanted to shut down their event. Not only did they prevent most people who wanted to attend from getting in, but they actually rushed the stage and attacked attendees. Fighting back is not an act of aggression, it's an act of self-defense. And stealing the flag in the process of it, perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. If someone is attacking you and you punch them in their face and you end up with their flag at the end of the confrontation, good on you. Good on you. And I hope that Sargon keeps that flag forever and displays it as proof that you can fight back against these people. See, here's the thing about it, and we witnessed this over and over and over again when Antifa was coming out in force over the last year. Whenever people fought back against them, they lost. It only takes a little bit of resistance to actually win a battle against these Antifa people, because they're not strong physically. They're not strong mentally. They wear black because they wear black and cover their faces because fundamentally they're cowards. They're scared. The scariest thing for these people is to be revealed to the world. That's why they hide their faces. To be isolated away from their friends. See, this is what they like to do. They like to get into large groups of anonymous people who look intimidating and put together in great numbers. And they like to gang up on small groups of opposition. You very rarely see them actually go after large groups of people. Right? It very rarely actually happens. And so mostly it's a lot of throwing items from behind several rows of people. It's a lot of yelling, a lot of posturing, a lot of shouting. But when it gets down to actually fist fighting, they usually try to get people that are isolated and attack them. And we saw this with the event with Richard Spencer being punched. A dude ran up behind him, sucker punched him in the face, and then ran off. It wasn't a fight, he was sucker punched. That's what they like to do. But when you fight back against these people, they're not equipped to actually have a battle with people. So if they come at you, if they start attacking you, if they start using bully tactics, know that you can win if you just put up a fight. They can't defeat you. They're cowards and weaklings. So if you put up a fight, there's no reason on earth why you should expect to lose. Now, the event had to be canceled due to the violence, even though all protesters were violently thrown from the venue by security guards. And that was a great thing to see in the video. Brooks and Sargon had to continue at a nearby location. The rioting was not spontaneous. A Facebook event to protest Brooks' talk was organized by the KCL, King's College, I don't know what the L stands for, the King's College students, Intersectional Feminist Society, big shocker there, Kashmir Solidarity Movement, again, you see the word solidarity and it can tell you what kind of organization we're talking about, the KCL LGBT+, KCL Action Palestine Society, KCL Justice for Cleaners, Justice for Cleaners. That's a direct quote. I didn't write that in my notes. Justice for Cleaners. This is an actual. I wonder if Cleaners is a person. I have no idea what Justice for Cleaners is supposed to be. And the Demilitarized Kings Campaign. King's Libertarian Society, led by student Danny Al-Kafaji, issued a statement calling the evening, quote, an attack of violence clearly intended to silence Yaron and Sargon's planned debate via a series of jackbooted totalitarian tactics that unfortunately proved successful, end quote. The statement continues, quote, windows have been smashed and gas bombs were lit on campus. A number of KCL security guards on their way to the hospital after being assaulted, unquote. The Antifa fellows that got there were chanting no fascists on campus. Now again, like I said in my opening, this is all a result of taking people at bad faith. Sargon of Akkad is not a fascist. Yaron Brooks, a Jewish man, is not a fascist. He's an objectivist. He's a follower of Ayn Rand. Now, I know Ayn Rand isn't the most popular individual out there, but I can objectively say, objectively, that Ayn Rand is no fascist. I mean, I've read many of her books. I've read Atlas Shrugged, The Fountainhead, Anthem. I've read Capitalism, The Unknown Ideal. I've read a lot of her work, and nothing in there even hints at fascist tendencies. So to argue that a Jewish man who follows the philosophy of a Russian Jew is a fascist is absolutely ridiculous. There's no reason to assume that. And if you were to take the man on good faith, then and actually listen to him speak with the intention of understanding his viewpoint, and then follow that up with questions during the question and answer session that was to follow the speech, maybe you would learn a thing or two. Maybe you would actually figure out what it is that these people believe, why they believe it, and if you disagree, how best to rebut their positions. Because you can't do that unless you actually know what their positions are. When you don't know what when someone's positions are, you can simply chant, they're a fascist, and be done with it. Now, moving on, we do have there is some, I would call it good news on the front of North Korea. Now, Donald Trump came out on Thursday that he wanted to have talks with North Korea in May. But he was followed up by his press secretary on Friday saying that there need to be concrete concessions made before any talks can go forward. Now, a lot of people are very mad at Donald Trump for this, mostly on the conservative side of the aisle, because I can understand Kim Jong-un is a brutal and evil dictator. He's a bad person. He's an evil man. But I like the idea of having sit-down talks with North Korea. Look, things have been getting very out of hand on the Korean Peninsula over the course of the last year. A lot of threats and insults have been going back and forth. I think that we would benefit from a calming of escalations. You know, it benefits no one to have a war on the Korean Peninsula. As horrible as the continued existence of North Korea is, what would be much worse is a war on the peninsula. Because even in the best case scenario, that it's only a war between North Korea and the United States and its local allies, Seoul is a city of millions of people that's within an artillery range of the border. It can very easily, we talked about this on the show before, it can very easily be leveled by North Korean rockets. It can be hit with missiles. It can be nuked. Tokyo can be nuked. America is not going to suffer the bulk of the losses if it comes to war. It's not New York City that's going to be hit. It's not Los Angeles that's going to be hit. It's not even Honolulu that's going to be hit. We're far enough away and are protected enough with our anti-missile defense systems. Zach can tell you all about that. That we have very little to fear personally from an attack from North Korea. But millions upon millions in Korea itself would suffer terribly as a result of a war. If Donald Trump wants to sit down and have talks with Kim Jong-un, I'm all for it. Maybe nothing comes about as a result. Maybe nothing positive happens. Maybe they just leave the talks as angry with each other as they were going in. But maybe not. Maybe escalations calm. Maybe dialogues can be had. Maybe we can convince the North Koreans, however unlikely this may be, to abandon their nuclear weapons program. And maybe we can convince the North Koreans that we have no intention of attacking their country. Maybe, just maybe, we can begin a slow de-escalation of tensions in that country. That would be a good thing for everyone. That would be a good thing for Koreans, North and South, good thing for China, good thing for Japan, good thing for the United States, good thing for Russia and everybody who would be impacted by a war on the peninsula. There's very little I would hate more than for war to break out in Korea. It's a beautiful country. I've been there with some amazing people. The culture is great. The food's fantastic. Soju is one of the best alcoholic drinks in the world. I love it. I think these talks could very well be to everyone's benefit. And I hope they go forward. And quite frankly, if Donald Trump were to somehow be able to pull off peace on that peninsula, he would be more deserving of the Peace Prize than Obama ever was. All right, that's all for me. That's all for me, folks. I hope you enjoy this episode. Zach will be back next week on the Guardians of Liberty. Very soon, we will be broadcasting this show live from his studio in his home. Looking forward to that day. Don't forget to check out our website, roads2liberty.com. Check us out. Watch all our backlogged episodes. And I'll tell you, the Roads to Liberty crew, Ben Backus, recently interviewed Libertarian senatorial candidate Jim Schultz, and it was a very good interview. Jim very, very much impressed me in that interview. We promised to have his opponent, Mark Ellsworth, on the show. I don't think that's going to happen because I don't think Mark Ellsworth wants to run as a libertarian anymore. Maybe in the future we'll get into that and the reasons for it. But for now, I've just encouraged everybody who listen to this to also listen to the interview with Jim Schultz. I hope that he convinces you that he's the right man for the job. And I will see you again next week on another episode of the Guardians of Liberty. You all have a good night, everybody.